everyone. It's our meeting with the MAG, and I see at least 2 MAG members in the room, and hopefully more will be joining us. We have also Carol, the MAG chair, with us. She was with us when we had our internal meeting. When was that? On Sunday, I think. Yes, and we had a very constructive internal meeting just for the benefit of the MAG members, and we are willing also to improve, to work on our internal accountability, and we will keep the MAG informed. But right now, I think we are awash with the success of the DC main session. It really went very well. It was in that sense, an experiment. As in previous years, we had representatives of DCs who talked about their own DCs. This year, we had clusters, and we had the DCs reporting on what they could contribute to the GDC themes. And with that, I would like to hand over to Jutta. She was the mastermind behind the session, and she was herding the cats and really made sure that they all stuck to the script. Jutta, would you like to inform us a bit about the main session?
Yes, of course, but I wouldn't take all the credits on my own because I had my co-coordinator, which is Joao, I hope. Do we have online participants in? Yes, it would be nice to see him. I'm pretty sure he will be there to speak with us. Just a few seconds to see whether it works. Okay, great. So yes, I'm going to continue. I do think that the main session yesterday featured what was done the weeks before. It was a good showcase and good example of collaboration of dynamic coalitions. And I do think this is like the main theme of dynamic coalitions in this year in the preparations for the Internet Governance Forum. We already did collaborate because we now have 31 dynamic coalitions, and I've been approached by several people here during these days who wanted to set up further dynamic coalitions. So I do think we need to consider how we will manage that when maybe we end up with 40 or 50. There is a need for collaboration, and we showcase that it's possible that dynamic coalitions collaborate, that they find their common ground to start from, not only to build a main session together, but also to have their workshops set up together. Several dynamic coalitions came together to have joint workshops. These, from my time on the MAC, I remember the procedures to merge sessions are always a bit tricky, I would say. But for the dynamic coalitions, the merging went smoothly. As far as I was concerned, I saw it went very well. And in the main session yesterday, we had 21 out of 31 dynamic coalitions that contributed to the session, that were referred to, that had the speakers on the 5 main objectives for the Global Digital Compact refer to the work that these respective dynamic coalitions are doing for implementing the GDC. So I do think it was really setting a good example from my side so far.
Thank you, Jutta. And can I hand over to you, Carol, if your thoughts and impressions and guidance?
I thought that the session went very well. I wasn't able to stay for the full time, but it was very engaging, as you just said. I think maybe going forward, we could stick with the clusters and do more. Have maybe workshops during the year as a cluster, so that people are aware what's going on in the DCs?
Thank you. That is indeed an idea we discussed, to have these sort of workshops. I think the policy network started doing that, giving sort of webinars on an issue, and we have some very focused DCs, and I think so far in the DC coordination group we have mainly discussed process and procedures, which is important, but I think we said that several times, we should also maybe have substantive discussions. And what Jutta said also about the merging, I attended one of these sessions, which was between the Dynamic Coalition on Core Internet Values and Net Neutrality. They had related issues that they did on artificial intelligence, and it was extremely engaging and interesting and rich in substance. So definitely, I think this is the way forward, that we try and cluster the themes that will, I think, give also more visibility to the individual DCs by having more impactful sessions. We also I will pass on to the floor, yes. We also discussed ways, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we discussed also a bit on the DC accountability, and we may have to, I mean, we have discussed that. We have this paper that we published in 21. Okay, that was some years ago, but the conclusions still remain valid. They were not made the conclusions in recommendations, but more in issues to be explored. And one of the issues explored is also, how do we sunset dynamic coalitions that do not perform? That is, of course, a touchy issue, as everybody presumably would like to continue, but we have to be aware that we cannot just carry on dynamic coalitions that are nothing here in the name and don't do any meaningful work. But we have not come up with a procedure. One suggestion was made, which I liked very much, which was by our dynamic coalition on gaming, that we could use maybe gaming procedures to just to see how dynamic coalitions perform. And that is sort of a ludic way of doing things, and nobody wants to be the worst in class. So that could be a stimulus for performance. So, I mean, if you attend the call, you get that many points. If you make a proposal, that is whatever, you know, you get brownie points. And if you're a good boy or girl, and maybe also you get points taken away if you miss a call. And, you know, there is plenty of scope there to explore, but it's sort of, the idea is more to have a fun way of doing things. So that could be interesting, and that's something we will explore. But I will no longer monopolize the discussion. Mark, you asked for the floor. Roman, can you run around with a microphone, please? Thank you.
Yes, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Marcus and Jutta and Carol, for opening our important session today. And one reflection on the main session. Sorry, I'm Mark Arvell. I'm with IS3C Dynamic Coalition, and I was one of the
you moderated, yes.
I was one of the two moderators yesterday. And one aspect of that I wanted to underline really is that as the IGF positions itself with a core role in the follow-up to the GDC and the implementation phase and so on, I think we illustrated yesterday how the dynamic coalitions should contribute to that role, to fulfill that role of the IGF in taking forward the objectives and the commitments to action in the compact text. So I hope that's been noted by the Secretariat and by the leadership panel and those who are sort of developing the strategy for taking forward the IGF's role in the GDC follow-up. And also looking ahead really as well, which is not far away, the WSIS plus 20 review. You know, there are dynamic coalitions like DC Environment, which are there ready to contribute to inputs from the IGF community to the WSIS plus 20 review, not only with regard to sort of ensuring the IGF mandate is renewed, but also being an active contributor to the whole review process. Thank you.
Thank you for that. No, absolutely. And we have Carol here, who is also an ex officio member of the leadership panel, and she already promised to take it to the leadership panel. Carol, please.
Right. So the leadership panel is extremely interested in meeting with the DCs. I informed them that there are coordinated meetings and they are extremely interested in attending the meeting because they do realize or do recognize the importance of the DCs. So that was one thing, especially Vint mentioned, I think it was yesterday, that he wants, before I even could say anything, he said, you know, he wants to meet. So yes, definitely.
Windsurf has been an active member of the DC on core internet values right from the beginning, and he was also participating in the session they had. And here comes Olivier, who was one of the organizer of that session of core internet values. I see Rajendra would like to say something, please.
Good morning, and it's been a great experience over the years to see working with Dynamic Coalitions. I'm Rajendra Gupta. I lead the Dynamic Coalition on Digital Economy, Environment, and Digital Health. And I think now we are at an inflection point, given that we are going to help in the implementation of Global Digital Compact. So we need to get to define our framework so that we have an overarching theme, and below that, all the DCs have that checkbox of saying we did do in these areas. So I think that will activate more DCs to be proactive and delivering. And I think since 2021 study, now we are in getting 25. So what we should do is probably do an anonymous survey with our DC members to check what exactly do they need, because sometimes for want of being very diplomatic, for want of being polite, they don't share. So if we do an anonymous study, you know, just a few 4 questions of what they do, what they want to do, what are the barriers, and how they want to address those barriers. So I think we'll be able to get some real good insights for action. You know, at the end of the day, DCs are a very cohesive force on our ground up movement. So that's my suggestion we should do. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Rajendra. I do think that is a brilliant idea, but I'm just wondering whether this could be based on the form that you need to fill when you endorse the GDC, because for my organization, it just helped me to consider what parts of our work is contributing to the implementation of the GDC. So I'm pretty sure we just don't need a separate form. It's guiding all the dynamic coalitions and all their members, because it's not the dynamic coalition that will endorse, it will be the members of the dynamic coalitions, because the dynamic coalitions is not an entity at such. But what you have to fill in the endorsement process is the consideration which parts of my work, of our work, will contribute to the implementation. So I'm pretty sure that will turn out easy.
Thank you. And I also look to the MAG members in the room. That's all most welcome here, but we also would like to hear. Oh, someone online would like to talk. Oh, yes, I see. Yes. Excellent. Yeah. Right. Any thoughts from any of the MAG members? We're also open to criticism and suggestions. What can we do better?
So online participants, I believe it's worth raising a hand so that we will see if you want to say something.
Yes, okay.
Please, we have one.
Wout and then Chris.
Wouter Natters with IS3C. No, it's switch on, yeah. Wouter Natters is also with IS3C, Internet Standard Security and Safety Coalition. I want to respond to what Rajendra was asking and how Jutta responded. I don't, with all respect, but I don't agree, Jutta. The Rajendra was pointing to organizing ourselves and not about organizing the GDC, because in the end, I can't endorse the GDC as an individual, and I'm not going to. I'm not going to endorse it as a dynamic coalition, but we will look at the topics. And that's a different subject to understand, but we want to organize ourselves, that we have check boxes, as Rajendra is saying, that we agree on and that we can work within that framework. And that gives us more focus as dynamic coalitions, and also on the sort of output we will be delivering, and perhaps organize ourselves in the clusters, as you already have yesterday, pointing to this is the topic of the GDC where my dynamic coalition fits under. Let's organize ourselves so that we can present in Lillestrøm or Oslo, what it's called, next year. And we have a focused presentation with output. And that also helps the IGF because it will be IGF outputs put on stage there. So that's, I think I agree with Rajendra to organize ourselves better and more clustered. Thank you.
May I have a suggestion that we postpone this discussion on how we organize ourselves to our first coordination group meeting in the new year, and focus the discussion more on how we fit in the broader IGF framework. Chris, please.
Yes, hello. Yeah, so Chris Buckridge, I'm a MAG member for another 6 hours. So, yeah, I had the chance to attend the DC main session, and I thought it was very interesting, and I really liked the framing and the sort of larger themes and sort of grouping some DCs and having them report back. I thought that worked really, really nicely. I think that also could play really nicely as a sort of idea into planning with the new MAG for IGF 2025, because I think we had some discussions yesterday in sessions about sort of the need to evolve formats, evolve how the structure is developed, and that idea of sort of a broader theme, like maybe several DCs could contribute to one thematic track within the 2025 IGF. So I think it would be great to have, and we should ensure that the DC coordination is ready to engage with the new MAG, with the host country, really from today, as soon as we can get this sort of moving, because I think time is of the essence, obviously. I was interested, and I'm interested here today to sort of hear how central a framing device the GDC is being considered. I think if that's being useful for the DCs, then that's very good. As a sort of structure or mechanism that we see as, within WSIS, or ideally coming out of the WSIS review as something subsidiary to WSIS, I wonder if it's a bit limiting. But as I say, if it's simply seen as a way to organize and focus the DC work in a certain way, then that's useful. I think there was a question yesterday in the main session where someone said, so what actually does endorsing or being part of the GDC do for us, do for the thing? I thought it was telling that there was sort of silence on the panel. I think it was Olivier who then said, ask not what you can do, what the GDC can do for you, but what you can do for the GDC, which is a nice line, but I'm sort of like, I'm not really sure I need to ask what I can do for the GDC. I'm more curious what the GDC can do for me. And if we don't have a really clear idea of that, then I worry a little. But as I say, if it's a useful framing device for the DCs to focus their work, that's something that it can provide, and that's nice to see. But no, I'm looking forward to IGF 2025, and I think DCs can have a really important role there.
Thank you for that, Chris. And you're right. I think for us, it has been a useful framing device. Otherwise, we would have to start from scratch. And you know as well as I do, we have a large group. It's difficult to agree on something, but here we have something which we can take, and nobody can criticize us for it. It's just somebody else has decided on that, and we are willing to contribute and to play the game. But your comments are extremely useful. One thing I would like to add, which is also high on our agenda, and for this meeting, we really would like, our big ask is to have a MAG liaison for the DC coordination group. So there's somebody who dedicates some time. yes, we know you're all overstretched and a limited bandwidth, but it would be very useful to have a link between the MAG and the dynamic coalitions, and a liaison that goes both ways, that the liaison tells us the MAG thinking, also potential fears, criticism, whatever. And at the same time, the liaison would inform the MAG of the thinking of the DCs. But if you go forward in the way you have outlined, that I think would even be more relevant to have a liaison from the MAG. Yes, Celine has a hand up.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for really having that meeting, not only for the Dynamic Coalition members joining, but also for the MAG members. Because from a secretariat point of view, I think I've seen that there has been, unfortunately, a little bit of disconnect between the work of the Dynamic Coalitions and MAG members. What I want to say by that is, personally, I believe that Dynamic Coalitions have an a really high amount of expertise, knowledge. And for example, when we within the IGF Secretariat are organizing some sessions, personally, I'm going back to Dynamic Coalitions to ask for speaker recommendations, depending on the kind of expertise that they have. Poor Olivier has been responding to my countless emails when organizing, for example, the parliamentary track. And what I want to ask actually both to the Dynamic Coalitions but also to MAG members is, how would you like to be integrated in next year's program? This year, as you know, we tried to have a collaborative approach, meaning that we were asking for mergers. This did not come out of nowhere. We did a survey amongst Dynamic Coalitions. We received quite a lot of responses, and we offered various options to select from. So we're asking, do you prefer to have a limited number, let's say 10, and you are being selected by MAG members, the session proposals, I mean, or do you prefer to have shorter sessions? Do you prefer to have mergers? So the favorite response from all the Dynamic Coalitions were indeed mergers. We understand that this was the first year that we had this approach, and it was a little bit difficult into, going back to the various Dynamic Coalitions who proposed sessions. But we wanted to know now, from a perspective of Dynamic Coalitions, did you like that approach? Would you like to also do it for 2025? From a MAG member's perspective, would you like to have Dynamic Coalitions being integrated differently? Would you like to select the various sessions given a shorter or like how do you say? I'm sorry, it's the last day, I'm tired. A limited number of slots. So just for us to know how to best cater also the needs of the Dynamic Coalitions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. And all these questions were actually raised already in the 21 exercise. The question, should Dynamic Coalitions be more horizontally integrated into the IGF program? Before it was just silos. And, the Dynamic Coalitions had their individual session. Then we started with having a main session of Dynamic Coalitions where we tried to synthesize a bit the contribution. This year, it was a more structured approach, and I think we all agreed it worked better this way. But also going forward, I think it would be more impactful in many ways if there was more of a horizontal integration of DCs in the program. But this is obviously something we have to discuss going forward. But I see Jutta would like to comment.
Yes, I would like to make a suggestion, and that is based on two things. We will have time constraints when we only have 6 months to go for the next IGF. And secondly, we all have limited resources. And when I consider 31 or 32 Dynamic Coalitions preparing their workshop proposals, their session proposals, which will take time, and then afterwards we will merge, which will take time again. So I think it's pretty much better to merge beforehand and have joint proposals when we go forward, not have the two-step approach, but bringing Dynamic Coalitions together in advance, trying to find their similarities, their parallel work, and then go forward with was joined or not merged, then it would be a joint session proposals from several dynamic coalitions together. It's just a suggestion. It's based on my experience, and I would love to discuss this further with other dynamic coalitions. Thank you.
I think I agree with Yuta. If you take the angle of aligning with what the GDC is doing, and you look at your coalition and you and see, okay, out of the GDC, this, and this falls under what I do, and then you look at everybody and say, okay, well, we're gonna group based on GDC. It's just a suggestion. But what I'm saying is that I think that you should find your cluster before, as opposed to doing a separate then merge. Just have your cluster from the beginning and you work as a cluster going forward.
Thank you. That makes very much sense. But I see two hands up. Lito first and then Wout.
Thank you. I have a topic, but it's different from this one. I just wanted to recall it because in the workshop proposal form, there is a question we ask, is the relation to the IGF intersectional work with the proposal and any DC or other intersectional work. So I was wondering if DC will look at this data from this year. So it will be helpful or what? So we can ask Luis to deliver that data from the DC. So every DC can look at what proposals, even if they didn't make it, are related to the DC. Is this information relevant, important? Thank you.
Thank you. Wout.
Yes, well, tonight's ICC. Mark had his hand up as well, but he's, as I'm the coordinator, he gives it to me, but could be a different topic. So that said, I think we, as a dynamic coalition, looking at my own dynamic coalition, but it will be the same for many, we have to make two distinctions when we go to the IGF. The first one is the past, so the cycle that ends at the IGF, and the outcomes. And the next is, what are we going to do in the next cycle? And what I noticed with these merged sessions, it's almost impossible to put focus on your outcome because you have to do it with 2 or 3 others, and in the main session with 31 others. And you want to look forward announcing what you're going to do. So where do we put the focus? The output is what we've been working on the whole year. And for my own coalition, I had to really struggle to get our result even presented here. And I struggled with the announcement of the new one because it just did not fit any of the clusters because we do 7 different topics. And that makes it extremely hard to present your outcomes. And when I think about the outcomes, what we are suggesting to do as dynamic coalitions, we discussed at least with some of them, and they agreed, is that we make an inventory between now and half of January on what we think that we're going to deliver in Lillestrøm. And where the GDC is concerned, also look at the past, what would fit into the GDC, the work that we've already done. So that's my first point. How do we get our results better integrated into the IGF? I like Lito's suggestion very much that we get an alert saying dynamic coalitions, the proposals are here, take a look where you fit. If you talk about horizontal, we work on all these different topics and they will fit into many of the workshop proposals. So how come that we've never gotten, as IS3C, never gotten an invite from anybody saying, would you come and present in a workshop on this topic that you've been working on? So there's a total disconnect between people who make a proposal and people working in the intersessional. So that is something that I cannot coordinate as an individual, but from the MAG, there could be this overview saying, nudging, you have to look there as well. So I think that that would make sure that we have this integration. And from there, we'll take it because after 2025, we'll have to see what happens. But it's even in this short cycle, if we work together, then we can achieve a lot more than we were able to do this year. And I think that would be extremely positive for everybody concerned. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. No, this is extremely valid remarks, and this is something we have been struggling with. It's precisely this horizontal integration, which we always said it would be better. And we also did that with, I do remember, with best practice forums and the NRIs, invite them to a session, it'd be useful, and also give them speakers if they want, whatever the NRI meetings. But it is something which for some reason is difficult to get started. But I see Mohammed has his hand up. Please, you have the floor, sir.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marcus, Carol, and Utah. Mohammed Shabir, for the record, from Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability. And when Wout was speaking, I think he was speaking not just on his own behalf, but for many of us. I appreciate IGF Secretariat and the current host implementing many of the guidelines from Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability that we updated this year. We were launching these guidelines, and we had to launch these guidelines in an annual meeting, which we had to book in a bilateral room, just because we did not get we had to merge our session with another DC, and it was difficult to do that session. Windsurf, thankfully, he came for some time in the session, and he promised that he will take those guidelines to the leadership panel as well. Moving forward, there was a suggestion that there could be some accommodation and there could be some person with disability or experienced person with the organizing team who could have. So we are working on that proposal. But the idea of giving output to the IGF and giving some concrete deliverables after the IGF. So we do have those guidelines, we do have the outcomes, but when we try to organize our work with a different DC, and we don't know as to what DC that would be for going forward for the next year. So it's difficult to organize yourself and making your own annual plan. So I would say in terms of organizing, it would be more helpful if there was some sort of horizontal discussion with the MAG on DCs. For instance, this year there was a lightning talk on social media and students with disabilities. And I had to, so as a Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability, we did not knew of having this session. I went there at that lightning talk, and I had to totally disagree with the kind of suggestion that was being proposed by the moderator themselves. Why so? Because that was totally out of the context, and it could be misperceived if taken as it is. So we do have, as Celine said, this experts groups. And if there are any sessions which are related to these core groups, perhaps MAG can take the advantage of in-house expertise within DCs, not just for taking out the sessions, selecting them, but also nudging some of the sessions to get in touch with the DCs on a specific topic. That would be more helpful. And I think there is where our suggestion of having a MAG liaison would work out. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, this is an extremely valid point, and we noticed that before, that we have this expertise, this so-called in-house expertise with the DCs, and they don't get integrated in the program when it comes to shaping it. But I see that Carol would like to react, please.
I'm not sure if I have a disconnect somewhere. So I don't think it's so much about merging DCs. It's more, to me, in my mind, it's more about harmonization and focusing. And it may not be past 2025, but since we have a short space of time to organize, we're trying to look at how can we do what we need to do. And, we're saying 6 months, but really honestly, it's not going to be 6 months. You're going to probably have 4 months to really get things done. So we're looking at, in my mind, we're looking at organizing within your own DC some kind of correlation or alignment with the SDGs and the GDCs and the GDC, sorry. And when you align your work with those, then when you step back and you look and say, hey, I'm really aligning with this DC, that DC, and you could come up with, you might find yourself in many clusters. So what the organization organizing this year might be around different focus points out of the GDC or a grouping of SDGs, as opposed to, so you might find your work being repeated across the spectrum of the GDC or the SDGs. So we're not asking you to change your focus. We're just asking you to align with these things, which you probably already do. But yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I think it also goes both ways. If you, we would like the MAG to look at the DCs when shaping the program, but the DCs can also look at what the MAG is doing. And when proposals come in from workshops, the DCs can also put up their hand and say, hey, we are related to this. And I think Mohammed's example was an excellent example of how things should or should not work. And the fact you happened to be there by coincidence, and then you corrected the views expressed, seen from your perspective. But I think that can happen more upstream when shaping the program. And I see there are hands up right in the back. I can't see who it is. And Chris again. Yes? Okay. Okay, Chris.
Sorry, thanks. I think Carol actually touched on what I was going to say. I think obviously the MAG is aware of and should be thinking about the DCs. But I do think probably it needs to come from the DC side. And I think, Wout, when you're saying there haven't been any invitations for your DC to speak in workshops that are relevant to what you're doing, I think that's something where it would be more coming from the DC to reach out to those workshop organizers and say, hey, there is work already ongoing here. Would you like us to come and speak? And I think if a DC has a depth of bench where they can offer, various speakers of different gender or regions, and that can help out the workshop organizers in meeting those diversity requirements, so much the better. I'm sure that would be very much appreciated. I do think we need to make sure in facilitating that we have the workshop proposals available. Each of them have the organizers listed, so it should be straightforward to reach out. Probably within each DC, I know the sort of overarching DC coordination is working very effectively, but it probably also means within each DC that is interested in that kind of activity to have its own engagement with and sort of following where things are at in that certain phase. I do think I took Mohammed's point it's certainly important to have that intersection. I think the lightning talks are a bit of a Wild West space, and I think they should be, and that's okay. That's what the space is for. But it probably is a good encouragement to us all to spend some time in the lightning talk room and sort of engage with what's coming through there, because that's kind of the cutting edge of IGF, internet governance discussion in some ways. So good to sort of be able to come into there with experience and a deeper knowledge. But yeah, thank you.
Jordan is sitting next to it, and it's quicker.
No, just at the back. His hand is up for quite a while.
I'll get back to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Nancy. This is my first time to attend this meeting. I want to thank Dr. Mohammed for attending the lightning talk where I was the moderator. For me, my observation is there is a disconnect between disability mainstreaming and the industry. Therefore, the industry will do what works best for them because of the profit. But if we are to have accessible and accessible and facilitative infrastructure for persons with disabilities. We have to invite the industry players and the designers into the room, because we cannot work in silos. We have to work with them, because the lightning talk basically was looking at the social media effects for students with disabilities. However, the recommendation was to have plugins. All organizations will choose to have an internet, an interface within their web pages that is accessible. But how many of us know about the accessibility testing? Very few of us. Even probably the developers do not have the knowledge. For me, my recommendation, and I really thank him for coming to the session and bringing that to our attention, we need to work together with the developers. Thank you.
Thank you. Now can we go back to the front, Jordan, and then Dino, and then Mark.
Thanks, Marcus. Hi all. Just a suggestion about one way that might help to hook these together could be that when people are submitting workshop proposals or other session proposals, maybe we could have a field in the form that allows them to associate it with a DC or a policy network. And then that would create an easy way for people to associate that work as proposers. Might be something that MAG or the Secretariat reviews, and if something's been missed out, adds it in, so that, say, a dynamic coalition can just get a list of the sessions that have been attached to them and doesn't have to try and mind read all of the titles, or on the other hand, actually read all the proposals to understand the link. Because there's a lot of time involved in doing that. So that might be something that, isn't there a working group at the MAG that looks at the form? Lito's group, I don't know,
yes,
Lito here, so homework, yeah, it's already there. Oh well, then, is it being used?
Well,
Sorry.
it could be made maybe more specific, that that we say not just intersessional work, but DCs or best practice forum. So it's maybe easier to find. Chris has a quite reaction.
Well, just also, is that information making it to the DCs? So that may be the missing link in the chain here.
Well, there are some low-hanging fruits, yes. Okay, Dino, please.
Thank you, Marcus. I wanted to emphasize an aspect that maybe it's implicit in everything that has been said, but from my point of view, it may play a critical role in this moment. I think that where we are today is before the GDC and after the GDC. And in determining and defining how we should organize and how we should work collaboratively together as a DC, as a DCs and a MAG, I think that rather than just looking at how and whether we align with the GDC, I think, and maybe this is my personal view, opinion, probably biased by my background, I think the GDC, it really creates an important opening for the IGF and the MAG and DC in not just aligning, but also assessing whether the GDC is going to achieve its intended objectives. So I think this creates an opening for this group to play an important role in determining, one, what are the criteria for this assessment? We are talking about the WSIS review. In the GDC, there is a specific reference to the fact that the Secretary General will be required to report, and he created a compact mapping of its implementation. So I think here the role of the GDC and what has been alluded to before by Chris and by Dr. Mohammed, I totally agree. The expertise, the wealth of knowledge and experience that exists here is very relevant. And this relevant can be demonstrated not just going and align ourselves, but also working collaboratively in assessing how and whether the GDC is going to achieve its intended objective. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mark? I think you're going to say the same thing.
Yeah, very much supportive of that, Dina. Mark Harwell, IS3C. I also wanted to add, it's a kind of aspect that's relevant to what Chris was raising. I mean, what happens after an IGF workshop? You know, takeaways are submitted and so on, and then, you know, what happens? Is there a role really for DCs relevant to a particular workshop's takeaways to to be able to pick up what's happening. So to sustain the momentum, if you like, of what has been discussed and tabled as areas to develop, explore, research and so on, that could be an opportunity for DC to step in, which is relevant to that topic, and to pick up and say, look, we've done related work, we could help with sustaining the momentum of that issue. I'm always conscious that what happens at the IGF is great, and then what happens afterwards is less clear, and stuff drops off, and then it's repeated again at the following annual IGF. There's always that risk, and there's a criticism that often happens. DCs could be an instrument for sustaining momentum straight after a particular IGF by picking up individual takeaways that might be relevant to their individual expertise within the DC. So I table that as an idea to explore. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's again an excellent idea, but I think it really points to the same thing, that you need a better integration of the DCs in the overall program and the workshops, and to ensure the follow-up, I think. The remote participants seem to be very quiet. I'm looking to the wall here, so nobody else to say anything. Yeah. I would also I'm looking to Joao. He did, as Jutta pointed out, he played an extremely helpful role. He's a relative newcomer to this group, but I would actually like also to hear from his impressions, as sometimes quite refreshing to hear a newcomer's view to this group. Who?
I hope you can hear me. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. So yeah, I've been keeping a very keen eye and an ear on what is being said in the room. And even though I'm a newcomer to definitely this group, I've been already with the Dynamic Coalition on data-driven health technologies for a couple of years already. So I've been getting to see the dynamics of the work as well. And it's true that I like the perspective that was suggested in the room of having a more proactive role from a MAG in reaching out to DCs instead of being the opposite. I've heard this being suggested.
We have some interference with the sound. I don't know whether you should turn off some of your devices to make it clearer. Can the technicians in the room help?
Will maybe
Please go on.
turn off my own cells. Well, I cannot hear you now, but hopefully there's less interference.
Interference? Is there nothing they can do, the technicians? It may be on your side. Has anybody suggestions what you should?
They're saying that they can hear him clearly online, so it could be in here.
Okay. Well, carry on, and let's ask the technicians to try and.
Does anybody in the room have their mic on their device? No? That's all right. Let it continue.
Carry on, Joao.
Yeah, I will then proceed with it. Yeah, okay, perfect. I was just saying that it seems to me apparent that the proactiveness from MAG is also something that is very welcomed from the DCs. There's work that is being done on several parallel streams, and at the end of the day, it is a collaborative effort, and it is a pool of experts that is readily available for any proposals for workshops, for meetings. And I think that it's also very easy to reach out to, because it's a community that very much understands the purpose of IGF and the purpose of the work that is being done by MAG itself. And also, there's not just technical experts within the DC communities, there's also academic representation, there's private representation as well. So many times I realize that for some of the topics, we don't really need to go far in terms of reaching out to the wider community. The community is there and is represented by the DCs. So this is something that was very apparent to me over the past couple of years. And it now is even being more realized, particularly after seeing the sessions that are being developed, which are very high level and bring together people from many different clusters of society, meaning that there are many backgrounds. And so my recommendation would be just that. It's also something that was voiced during the session yesterday. The DC main session, and also I believe that this is general feeling within the DCs.
Thank you for these comments, Joao, and thank you once again for working so hard and so well with Utah and putting the main session together. Mohammed has his hand up, please.
Thank you, Marcus. I just have a quick question. I was thinking, and there is still very less time left. There are many MAG members here, and the core suggestion from the DC that Marcus illustrated was the having a MAG liaison to the DC. So I am really interested, what do MAG members think about this suggestion? Thank you.
Is there any MAG member who would like to react? I see Lito's hand. Please, Lito.
Thank you. I think it's a great idea. We should implement it. I kind of remember that last year it was proposed. I don't know why we didn't implement it, but in any case, the thing now is that in a process of renewing or establishing a special MAG, so we have to wait for that. But I think it's a good idea, and I think we should proceed with it.
Thank you. Well, we all seem to be in violent agreement that the MAG liaison would be helpful to have. The question is just then finding the victim, somebody who is willing to put in some work and has enough bandwidth. Chris, please.
Just to say, we've had one in the past. I mean, Adam, I think, was, and he termed out, and I think there wasn't anyone who necessarily stepped in. So we've had a gap of a year, maybe 2 years. I think it's a good idea. We should certainly do it. And when we have the new MAG identified, we should identify a MAG liaison, DC liaison.
Any other comments? I think we have till 10 o'clock, if I'm not wrong. There is. Okay, please.
Thank you very much. Sava here, MAG member. I do agree with the liaison between MAG and DC, actually. And just one point to add also on how MAG and DC could collaborate in the future, perhaps next year. For example, if DC is working on topics such as GDC or WSIS, or on emerging technologies such as AI, perhaps a MAG coordinated joint session could explore how the DC's findings can align with the IGF's team, especially when you say, okay, AI, how it can align with emerging technologies and so on. So, for example, this could include a discussion on integrating these outputs into the IGF's policy recommendations and discussed at the different workshops as well as in the main output of IGF. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think what I can hear is that there also seems to be a general feeling that more can be done, and it should be done more upstream than just before the session, that we look at the sessions once the program is out, but that we look more upstream when we are shaping the program, and that we make the connection between the DCs and the session organizers. Any other comments, or shall we slowly proceed to wrapping up the session? I see Jutta has, Wout has.
Yes, thank you, Marcus. I think that I'm totally going to go to positive out of this session, because I think we've had a report together, we have an understanding together, and I think that as DCs, and then we're looking internally, but as a sort of recommendation that there's some points coming out of this meeting that we have to solve as soon as possible. So in our first meeting, we have to discuss these points so that we can present them to the MAG at the first MAG meeting. And then hopefully that we have the liaison, but also the integration. And I think the suggestion to change the wording, how do you integrate with intersessional work, if that's more specified, that also becomes a box to tick in the proposal, and not mandatory one, a voluntary one, that would help us as DCs to identify, because we have to do the work. I'm totally in agreement with Chris. We will have to do the work as DCs ourselves, but then we know what to look for. And I think if we set the action points that we've identified, start addressing them, then we have the time to cooperate in these 6 months or effectively 4 months to make this happen. So I want to thank you, Carol, for your interest in the DCs that you've been showing in the past year. Thank you very much. And the coordinators for their work to bringing this all together and making it possible, and the secretariats for all the support we've been getting, and Celine, also you, in the past. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. The technicians gave the word. We have to wrap up now. We came to the end. So, Jutta, a few closing remarks?
Thank you. I do think what Wout said were already in the closing words somehow. But let me phrase some. So when you try to reach out to people via the internet, there is always this approach of pull and push. And I do think that is also, that we should take that approach when we try to overcome when there are disconnections. I don't see that from my dynamic coalition. I haven't seen being disconnected. Otherwise, people came and were asking, okay, child protection, children's rights, can we do something together? And I do think that is pushing and pulling. We as dynamic coalitions need to go forward, have a look out where there are people who want to do workshops, who might benefit from our work, and vice versa. And if we as facilitators for the dynamic coalitions can facilitate also that process, we need the help from the MAC, we need the help from the Secretariat to facilitate that. But I think when we build it on that approach, it will work out. And it will work out only when we have a short period of time to prepare. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I hand over to Carol for closing remarks.
I think this was a very productive session, and going forward, I think I'm probably the person that will have to take it into the new MAG, as we don't know who constitute the MAG for 2025. But as Wout said, you know, you always have my support, and I really try to give you some type of socialization wherever I go. I make sure mention the DCs, and I will continue to do so. I think, as I said in the session, that when I need to do my research, I go to the DC that I need information from, and I look at the reports, I look at the information, and I use that information from within my interventions, and I indicate, please go to the Internet Governance Forum website, and this is where you'll find the information, where I found the information. I will take up on what Nancy said and take it back to the IGF that we do need the accessibility, usability expert for our website, for the social media platforms, as well as going forward when we look at the venue in Norway. So continue to do your great work. Thank you very much.
Roman wants to say a few things.
Yes, thank you, dear colleagues. I believe it was very productive. The work we've been doing this past several months, I was with you, and now I think, speaking on behalf of the Secretariat, that we do understand what are the next steps. And I believe that right after the January holidays, we can get back to this fast work to be on track with these pressing deadlines. And again, on behalf of the Secretariat, wanted to wish you a very, very joyful holiday season, and maybe also propose to do a family photo when we close the session.
Very good idea. Thank you, Roman. And also, I think we should commend him. The IGF booth, the Dynamic Coalition booth, worked very well in the village. I think everybody liked that, and I would like to thank you all for putting in hard work. Sort of was a bit last minute-ish, but I was a converted skeptic. I was not very positive to begin with because we had very negative experience before, but this year round it worked extremely well. With that, I close the session and invite you all to the stage for the family picture. Thank you.